The activity of thought creates all of the duality in life, and as a result, often creates a lot of suffering. But when did this all begin? What line did thought first imagine within infinite awareness, and how does it continue to affect us? Today, we find out. I have so many questions. Show me the answers. Why am I here? Should I follow the religion or should I go? What is truth? Come from? Why am I go straight? How can I know the truth? Welcome back, everyone, to An Ordinary Search for Truth and to part 3 of my new video series, What is Reality? Awareness and Its Activity. My name is Nate, and today we're going to be looking at the first polarization of thought within awareness, where our experience in life begins and the fundamental source of suffering in our life. In part 1, we looked at the 3 states of awareness: awareness in its resting state, its manifesting state, and its processing state. In part 2, we took a closer look at the processing state, or the activity of awareness processing its own activity of manifestation, which I have called thought, and how this generates the illusion of separation and duality. Here in part 3, we're going to identify when this illusion of separation and duality first entered our experience and its effect on our experience of life and reality. Interestingly enough, this duality, you and your experience, came into being at the very same moment. The very first belief that awareness imagines within itself when it manifests the limited processing state of thought is the belief of separation of self. Thought imagines this separation first because all there is to imagine separation within is the infinite self. It is the only thing to draw a line through. This is the most deeply held belief that we have, and it's very obvious in our experience that it is so. That you are a person, an individual, a self. Notice how intimate this belief is for you in your experience. No other belief came before this. It's probably the one fact that you would say is absolutely indisputable. Your entire life, of course, revolves around this belief. Most of what you do is in some way self-serving. You are, of course, very interested in maintaining and preserving your life, your identity, your health, your comfort, your relationships, your possessions, your job, your happiness. All of these things are very important to a self. At first, this is all we know. The complex process of thought has not become active. When we first enter manifestation, all we know is awareness as awareness, moving between the states of resting, unmanifest awareness and active manifesting awareness. We have no concept whatsoever of separation or of self and other. All appears as it is, as infinite pure existence. This begins to change when the thought or belief of separation becomes active. It is demonstrated and taught to us from birth that we are this limited body. We have a name, that we are a separate entity. And when this concept is first comprehended and accepted by us through thought, the oneness of awareness or of reality then becomes two. Now, instead of identifying as infinite awareness itself, knowing no separation, we identify as a limited experiencer, an I, which knows and is separate from the experience of other or not I. This did not occur when the activity of a body first came into being within manifestation, or when you imagined that you were born, when people have told you that you were born. You, as a separate self, came into being when you began to comprehend and accept the first thought of separation. This is when memories started being created and remembered to further sustain the illusion of a consistent self existing entity. I mean, look at your experience. You probably can't remember much from your first few years of life. Your earliest memories began after you accepted the thought that you are a separate experiencing self to which things happen and thus must be remembered. So, in this way, through thought, the illusion of self and other is accepted and becomes real to awareness, allowing the experience of relationships to arise. And this is really the first relationship that we have, that we know. The relationship between you as an experiencer, as a self, and the outside world as that which you experience. This is the first imaginary line drawn through non dual reality by the activity of thought. This is where duality begins, where experience begins, where we ourselves as an experiencer begin. It is the first polarization that's created. When once there was only I, infinite being, infinite subjectivity, now there is I, the limited subjective self, and not I, the infinite objective universe. I've mentioned before that this is not necessarily a bad or negative thing, and I really don't want to present it as such because awareness is all that is, and by being all that exists, it is necessarily alone without anyone or anything to have a relationship with. And yet, being one and being alone, it is still completely whole, completely self fulfilled, completely at peace. Awareness manifests the illusion of separation for a few reasons, so that it may have experience and explore its own infinite being, so that it can more fully express its own infinite potential and creativity through its manifestation, and to have relationships, which without the appearance of separation, it could not truly do, because there would be no limited point of view to experience and nothing being experienced. No relationship could be had. However, as I've stated before, a symptom that arises when this illusion of separation is taken to be absolutely true or as an accurate view of reality is the experience of suffering. We, as awareness, want to enjoy our own creation and the experience of relationships. And this can be done much more fully when we see reality as it is, or when suffering is overcome. We typically see suffering as something to avoid or remove completely. And yes, that is the aim. But at the start of our journey, when we're first starting out on a spiritual path, suffering acts as a messenger of truth. It is a feeling of disharmony which arises when our identification or understanding of reality is not resonating with the truth, with reality as it actually is. So when we become aware of this suffering as it occurs, it then has the power to reveal to us these beliefs and assumptions that we've made and taken to be true that are actually illusory. When first starting out on the spiritual path or path of realization, suffering is often the catalyst that drives us toward more understanding and more truth. We want to be free of suffering, which is actually equal to the desire to obtain truth. To the degree that we realize truth, we eliminate suffering by a directly proportionate degree. As our understanding resonates more and more with actual reality, the disharmony of illusion and misidentification kind of fades away. at first more powerful suffering, will reveal and help us overcome the more obvious illusions, which are built upon subtler, deeper illusions. As we continue, more subtle suffering will reveal and help us overcome these deeper illusions or these deeper beliefs that are not in harmony with truth. Layer by layer, we realize more and more truth. We see through more and more illusions and beliefs, collapsing the lines of separation and polarization that thought has created. And we become ever increasingly free of suffering, which in turn allows us as awareness to more fully experience and express our own creativity and manifestation. We'll be looking at some of these other fundamental beliefs in later videos, but ultimately they all lead back here. All beliefs of separation can be traced back to the primary belief, the fundamental illusion that we are a separate limited self, experiencing a separate infinite universe, when in reality this separation is a powerful imagination of thought. I'm going to read a quote by Alan Watts from his work, The Book on the Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are, that says this far better than I. Quote, "You have seen that the universe is at root a magical illusion and a fabulous game, and that there is no separate you to get something out of it, as if life were a bank to be robbed. The only real you is the one that comes and goes, manifests and withdraws itself eternally, in and as every conscious being. For you is the universe looking at itself from billions of points of view, points that come and go so that the vision is forever new." I love the way that he uses words to communicate this really profound understanding. Without the belief that there is a separate self that can suffer, there is no suffering. A lot of people are actually afraid of enlightenment or the realization of the illusion of self, because they have this idea that if the separate self that they take themselves to be is seen as an illusion, that then they will somehow ascend beyond or fade out of existence with the dissolution of the separate self. This is also a huge misunderstanding. This is thought imagining how realization will happen because it cannot comprehend infinite awareness. Like how I've mentioned before, deep sleep to thought seems to be this timeless blank space in experience. Thought imagines that if it, as a function of separation, is understood to be illusory, that the activity of thought will disappear. And all that will be known is what thought thinks is known when we are in deep sleep, when it is absent. This would be nothingness or void, non existence. But as I've said before, the appearance of this separate self and the activity of thought won't dissolve when it is seen for the illusion that it is. It's like saying that once you realize a mirage is a mirage, that it will suddenly disappear, or it's like saying that understanding an optical illusion is an illusion, that suddenly it'll stop appearing as an illusion. That's just not how it works. The difference is, if you realize that a mirage is a mirage and understand why it appears the way that it does, you won't go running around through the desert for water that isn't real. That is what suffering is. Taking illusion to be a true reflection of reality. So, realizing the oneness of reality, identifying as infinite awareness itself, can remove suffering. But the illusion of self and separation, the activity of thought and manifestation, these will continue to go on. These are not really things that you can necessarily be free of, because you as awareness are these activities. They are happening within you, but you don't have to suffer from them. When I was first putting together this course in awareness, I asked myself if the first polarization was actually between awareness in its resting state and awareness in its active manifesting state, before the activity of thought was even manifest. And this was confusing for me because conceptually I thought that they were separate, but then I was claiming that thought is the generator of separation. So then, how could they be separate when thought is not there? I realized that there is truly no separation in awareness between its resting and active manifesting states, in the same way that there is no separation in the ocean between its turbulent surface and its inherently peaceful depths. But when thought imagines each wave to be self existing or separate from the ocean, that's when suffering starts. The wave will fear its end without realizing its own infinite depth and activity. You are the ocean, but right now you believe that you are just the wave. And the activity on the surface will continue to appear, but through realizing the oneness and peace of your true, infinite, non dual self, your suffering will end and you will flow more freely and peacefully in the ocean of existence. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed part 3, definitely hit a like down below, and for sure subscribe so that you can be notified as each of these videos is released. Comment down below any further questions that you have about this video or any of my previous content. I'll do my best to help you gain some greater understanding and clarity. A huge thank you to my current and future supporters. I love you and appreciate you. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Don't worry, I've got a lot more content for you to enjoy. Click the link to the right to see a video that goes hand in hand with what you just watched. On the left is a playlist I recommend you check out. And down below, you can see my latest video release. Your support means the world to me, so thank you.